Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking through the second book of Brandon Sanderson's Era 1 of the Mistborn trilogy, entitled The Well of Ascension. Now the last video I did, or I guess the first in this series, was a brief introduction on Mistborn because I didn't want to give any of the spoilers away. That really wasn't the point of the video. It was really to intrigue and hopefully excite someone in order to read the book for themselves. I set out sort of the plot, the characters, and the main tension. Well, in this book, we're going to sort of do the same thing, but in lieu of the previous book, we're going to have to talk about some of the spoilers from the first book, The Final Empire. So this is your warning. If you have not read Mistborn, and you need to. So check out that book and then come on back, and maybe this will set you up for the second book, The Well of Ascension. So there's your warning. Do with it as you will. Well, The Well of Ascension. So again, spoilers, here we go. Book 2 is going to begin in the wake of the end of what Vin has been able to do. She has reacted and responded to Kelsier's his really constant brashness. And that really describes Kelsier well. He hates the Lord Ruler. He hates the fact that the Ska have been oppressed for 1,000 years, and he's done with it. He's tried several times to just rush in without thinking, and Vin's been able to pull him back. The other members of the team have been able to pull him back. However, towards the end of the Final Empire, Kelsier will not be held back again. And he rushes in, he fights some Inquisitors, and who shows up but the Lord Ruler himself. The fight ensues, and the Lord Ruler makes a quick end of Kelsier with some spears through the back, directly through his heart. Vin is heartbroken. Through the course of that battle, though, Kelsier saves Elend from being arrested and killed, and so sort of gives a little parting gift to Vin because he knows how she feels about him. Well, Vin reacts, responds, rushes Credicshaw, and ends up killing the Lord Ruler through the battle. Again, incredible writing, incredible drama, but in a note of what we'll interpret as fear that we should. The Lord Ruler's final words are that of pleading. You don't know what you're about to do. You don't know what killing me will unleash on the world. Vin slays him, and the book ends. We come to the second book, and they now have to put together the pieces. The remaining members of Kelsier's crew, as well as Vin and Elend, are now faced with the task of putting together the pieces. And Elend, because he is well read and committed to a democratic form of government, institutes a essentially constitutional monarchy in which there is a Senate, essentially an assembly of leaders who have the right to vote out the ruling monarch if they deem him or her ineffective or incompetent or incapable of ruling. And Elend is trying to lead in a way that he is committed to. He's trying to lead by respect and by honor as opposed to by fear and tyranny. And as the story continues, we meet a couple new characters. We have our originals, but one character who's fascinating is a terrace woman named Tindwyl. And she is very well respected by Sazed as well as the others of the Terrace people. And she finds her way to Luthadel and becomes Elend's tutor. Not a tutor in political theory per se. He's read enough about that. She becomes his tutor for turning him into a monarch. Elend has a lot of skills. He's very well read. However, he is not a leader. Kelsier, for all his faults, he was a leader, and he demanded that people follow him. Tindwyl cannot stomach the idea that Elend would want to lead by the will of the people. What a foolish concept. And her rationale for that is that, Elend, if you believe that you're the ruler and the best leader for this people, make certain that you are the leader. Don't leave it to the hands of the people. They're fickle. They don't know what's best for them. Elend also can't accept that. Well, that was the Lord Ruler's rationale. That is what led us to 1,000 years of tyranny. Well, as they go through the course of the story, Tindwyl's advice, Tindwyl's premonitions, her fears are ultimately met when the assembly decides to move on and elect a new king. Well, like sharks in the water, they smell blood. Some warring armies show up at the gates of Luthadel, and they are wanting to not just throw their hat into the rink of votes for a new king. No, they are going to take the city by force. And so the team, the crew, they have to figure out what they're going to do. Meanwhile, Sazed, who is traveling around the formerly known as the Final Empire, he is trying to train the Ska, teach them how to take care of themselves, how to set up their own lives now that they're free from the tyranny of the Lord Ruler. And he's met with a lot of pushback. He finds that the people really, though they had rough experiences with the ruling class, they themselves preferred to not have to worry about providing for themselves or setting laws and codes. Though it was difficult, the order was there. And Sazed finds, much to his dismay, that people preferred that. When given the choice of ultimate freedom to make a life for themselves, they didn't want to have to be responsible for that. They didn't want to have to deal with all of the problems of freedom, if I could put it that way. They just preferred servitude to another master. And sure, the Lord Ruler wasn't the best, and even the other of the ruling class who maybe were over them were not great people, certainly by any stretch of the imagination. It was just easier to have someone else deal with the details. And they could show up for work. They knew what they were going to be given. They knew what their life was going to be. And Sazed grows extremely discouraged. Something, though, I'll let you read it for yourself, but a timely appearance by a character and a short little side quest, a short little journey that they go on, convinces Sazed that he needs to return to Luthadel. And when he does, he finds what we've previously discussed. Things are in shambles. And just like the Ska, who didn't want to deal with the difficulty of freedom, Luthadel has been given a lot of freedom and a lot of choices. And as Tindwyl has said, Elend has let this happen because he is ruling by the will of the people. Conversations are had, discussions take place, and Sazed and Vin come to the conclusion that Vin may be the prophesied hero of ages, who through the course of reading, through the course of some historical prophecy that's found, they read the prophecy that the hero will be given the chance of taking the power of God for, as they believe, herself. But when presented with the chance of taking all the power like the Lord Ruler did, the true hero of ages, will give up the power, will demonstrate humility, will demonstrate selflessness. And so sort of the quest begins. Though there's a lot that goes on in the first half of the book, really the continued quest of the story begins when Vin, Elend, and Spook set out to find what is called the well, or essentially the centralizing power of God, and they need to find it, and then obviously, as it was said, give it up, demonstrate the ultimate form of sacrifice so that peace can come to the final empire. So that is the quest that has happened. Where do we find our characters towards the end of it? Well, as they go out on their quest, the remaining crew needs to defend Luthadel from the onslaught of warring armies. And that's where I'll end my play-by-play, because I encourage you to read it. Check it out. This second book in the trilogy has a lot of moving parts, a lot of newness. When we read Mistborn, the Final Empire, we come into an empire that has been going on for 1,000 years. It's a very old story, and there's a lot of normal things. See, people are used to for centuries and centuries and centuries. This is how life has been. The second book just is an onslaught of newness, and the reader learns with the characters that sometimes complete freedom, complete free choice is not always the best. Elend will learn that, and so will the other characters. And that's where we'll sort of land the plane, but maybe to finish with an interesting dynamic and an interesting query that Brandon Sanderson brings up. Really, he does juxtapose two ideas. One, where tyranny is wicked. Ruthless control is not good. But complete freedom is also not good. That's what Tyndall will argue for. It's actually cruel to let people do whatever they want without some type of moral guidance and actually moral leadership that is holding people accountable. And yes, limiting their free will in the situation because it's what's best for them. Which brings us back to the discussion of who gets to make that choice. And that's what Elend is struggling with. Then comes a really close to where Tyndall's at, and then looks at it, though, through the eyes of a warrior. And she sort of respects might and militaristic acumen. She is a very competent warrior. And for her, the one who gets to make the say is the one who has the sharpest blade. Elend really will have to grow. And just from the outside, again, looking in, I think it's interesting what Brandon Sanderson presents as good, what he presents as right throughout the book. The decision and the final resting place of this conversation, what is best when it comes to governing a large group of people? Is it pure democracy or a constitutional monarchy, or even all the way over here, a totalitarian government where there is no free choice? We see all iterations of it through this second book in the trilogy. And it's a good thought process. It's a good really immersion into this political theory discussion. So, the second book, Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn, The Well of Ascension. It has journey, it has quest, it has political drama. It really does. This is the one that you want to look to for political drama. The other two books on the bookends of this trilogy are pretty settled when it comes to governmental rule. This book is maybe where someone themselves can find yourself if you were put into this decision. A government that has ended after centuries of consistency, and you get the chance to make whatever you want. Elend's put into that position, and it's interesting to see how he grows through this. An incredible book, really an incredible story. There's a lot of emotions that the reader experiences through this story. And I encourage you to read it and discuss it below with me. Some things that I'd love feedback from. Where do you fall in this discussion? And maybe I'll just phrase the question here. What is the ideal form of government and why? I don't think that's the main point of Brandon Sanderson's writing of this book. Of course it's not. But it really undergirds a lot of the narrative plot. There are a lot of characters that have a lot of different kinds of authority, and a lot of characters that have a lot of different views of authority. I'd be interested to hear your perspective below. What is the ideal form of government and why?